Hi everybody, welcome to the webinar today. This webinar is entitled Advanced Test Management Works Even Better with TestComplete and QAComplete. Your presenters today are Nick Olivo. He is a senior automation engineer and also a TestComplete expert. Also, yours truly, Steve Miller. I have a little over 26 years of experience with both software development as well as testing, and also been using QAComplete since the inception of the product. Now the agenda, what we're going to look at today and what we're going to learn is we're going to talk about how we can reduce tester effort and the time to fully regress new software that you're developing with your new releases. We're also going to talk about how we can ensure that each requirement in your release is fully tested, and that really dovetails itself into traceability. We're going to talk about how we can reuse manual tests from release to release, because who wants to create the same test cases over and over and have to recreate them with every release? Next, we're going to look at how we can provide management tools that can give you some real-time testing statistics to let you know how you're progressing from a QA perspective. Then finally, we'll end up today talking about how you can determine what requirements, what tests, and what defects were worked on for a specific release. Little housekeeping notes here. Feel free today, as we're going through the webinar, to utilize the Q&A panel. And the Q&A panel is where you can ask any questions. We'll keep our eye on the Q&A panel, and we'll make sure that, that we answer any questions that come up today. Also, for those of you that use Twitter, make sure that you share the live event, because we're doing that. We're sharing the live event with hashtag test management. Additionally, we'll be conducting a follow-up session with this same hashtag today, directly following the conclusion of the presentation. So make sure you keep an eye on the Twitter assets there. We'll also be recording today's session, so make sure that others that didn't attend today, that are on your team that might have wanted to see it, let them know that we're going to have a recorded session that we'll be emailing to each of you, and feel free to pass that along to any of the other people on your team that might want to attend that maybe wasn't able to attend today. Okay, so what we're going to start off with today is we're first going to look at our automated testing tool, and that automated testing tool is TestComplete. And really what that is designed to do is it's designed to help you manage your regression test and get through your testing much quicker than otherwise. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn over the controls to Nick Olivo. Nick Olivo is going to take you through TestComplete and show you how that specific tool works.
All right, great. Thanks, Steve. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with everybody. And what I'm going to do right now is just go ahead and run a test that I've already created inside of TestComplete. I'm just going to go ahead and click this Run Project button. And this test that I've created is going to launch an application. It's going to place a new order into my system and verify that my order's total is being calculated correctly. And when the test runs, it gives us information about what happened during the course of the test. We can see here this test was mostly successful, as denoted by the green check mark, but we did have a warning that took place during the course of the run. And so you can imagine what it would be like to come in the morning and see the status of how your tests ran unattended overnight. You can just look at this report to know exactly what had happened here. So of course your first question is going to be, well, why did my test come back with warnings? And so what you can do here is double-click on this log node, and this will show you every single action that TestComplete performed during the course of a run. So we can see the reason we got this warning is that my application was already running. And so TestComplete's saying, hey, there was already an instance of this program running. I'm not launching anymore. And that's the only reason, if we look through the message types here, that's the only reason we got that warning. So now we can look through the actions that were performed and see everything that TestComplete did. For example, here we went to Orders, New Order. Then we chose Screensaver from a particular combo box. And if you come down here, you can see the actual name of the control that we were working with. So you are never left wondering what part of your application TestComplete's working with. On top of that, we also log screenshots of what your application looked like at record time, which you see on the left side of my screen, and what it looked like at replay time, which is what you see on the right. So you automatically receive a graphical audit trail of every action that TestComplete performed during the course of a test case, and that way, again, you're never left wondering about what was going on. You can always check your application state at every step of the way. Right here, we can see that we were verifying our order total was calculated correctly. In this case, we were expecting to find 900. We actually found 900. And because those values match, we call this a pass and mark it with this green check. And there's another message immediately thereafter telling us that the order total was calculated correctly. So every action TestComplete performed is stored here in the log file. Once you've got your results here, you can share them with other members of your team, or if you encounter failures, you can actually right-click here and say post defect into QAComplete or ALM Complete, and Steve will talk more about that a little later on during the course of the session. So what I'd like to do right now is just switch gears and show you real quick how I actually created that test. So what we're going to do is click on this record new project, or create new project I should say, and a project is just a collection of related tests and any relevant artifacts. So I'm just going to click next here. I'm going to choose to work with a Windows application today. If I'd like, I can actually type in the path to my executable, but for right now I'm just going to say next, because I want to actually launch the application via a shortcut on my desktop. And then as I record actions against my app, TestComplete will take screenshots of those actions, and it's going to store those right in line with our test. That'll make it possible for us to see everything that TestComplete's doing. And this is a feature called the Visualizer, which can be configured a little bit more on this screen right here. But for right now, I'm just going to keep the default settings and say next. And then finally, we choose what scripting language our project will use. What I'm going to show you today doesn't require a user to have a scripting background. However, if you do have that sort of background, or if you've got a development resource on the team who likes to help out with the QA efforts, then that person will probably want to work in code, and as such, they can choose from any one of the languages listed here. Just a matter of whichever one you happen to like best. In my case, that's JavaScript. All right, so now I'm just going to say record new test. You're going to see TestComplete minimized down to a small toolbar. And at this point, TestComplete's recording everything I do on my system. So that means I can just interact with my application as normal. I'm just going to launch the app right from the shortcut here. And I'm going to place a new order in my system just by going to Orders, New Order. And then we'll fill in the relevant fields here. I'm going to set my quantity equal to 50. And you'll notice that when I changed my quantity from 2 to 50, a couple of things happened. One, this discount field populated to a value of 10%. There's logic in the app that says, hey, if the user orders a lot of a product, give them a break on the price. And then two, we have this total field that's been updated to reflect both the new quantity and the discount. So when I put in 50 into my quantity field, I want to make sure that my total field equals 900. The way we're going to do that is with a feature called checkpoints. And checkpoints help you ensure that your application is behaving properly. Today we're going to create a property checkpoint because that text, that 900, is just the text property of a particular object on screen. So to verify that, I'm just going to drag this little crosshairs tool right over the item I want to verify. And you can see here TestComplete fetches back a reference to that object, and it names it based on the actual name the developers provided. So in this case, that field is actually called total. And this is important because now I'm not relying on screen positioning or resolution or XY coordinates or anything like that in order to find the controls on screen. I'm always going to locate them based on their names. Then we choose which property we want to verify, in this case WText. And the final screen just gives us a summary that we're going to look at that total field and verify its WText equals 900. And then we just finish filling in the fields here, and put in our username and his address and any other information that might be pertinent here. Give him an American Express card, click OK, and then close the application down. Now when we stop recording, TestComplete's going to take all those actions and render them as what we call a keyword test, which is basically just a graphical representation of everything that TestComplete did during the course of that recording. Once the test has been rendered, a novice user can then quickly look through and see everything that transpired during the course of the recording and then edit or modify the test as necessary. The great thing is that your tests that you create using TestComplete will run much faster than you can run them by hand, as you saw earlier today. And on top of that, you'll be able to run these tests on other systems simultaneously. So let's say you're supporting Windows XP, Windows Vista, and Windows 7. Rather than having to sit down at each one of those systems and manually test the same actions over and over again, you'll just be able to press a button and then invoke your tests on other systems on your network. And those tests, again, could be scheduled to run unattended. So think about it. Every day, 2 a.m., all the tests on all the systems you need to support kick off and run. Well, we can certainly do that. In fact, Steve will be showing you how to schedule tests through QAComplete in just a few minutes. And then here, once the test has been rendered, you can see all the actions that it performed. And again, we're using the actual names of the controls in order to identify them. So our product name field is called product names. Our customer name field was called customer. The street field was called street. And in addition to that, we also have those visualizer screenshots that show you exactly what the application looked like at every step of the recording process. So you're never left wondering what anything was actually doing. And thanks to this, you can make your test cases run a whole lot faster now, because recording them and replaying them will run faster than they can by hand, and these features like the visualizer and keyword testing make it a lot easier for new folks to quickly pick up automation and run with it. And that's going to save you a lot of time in the long run, as opposed to them having to learn some archaic scripting interface or something like that. All right. Once your tests are created, running them again is just a simple matter of clicking this Run Test button, and then TestComplete takes over and it runs all the actions that you recorded. And in a moment you'll see the results come back, which will show a success message, just like what we saw earlier today. So really quick and easy to create your test cases using TestComplete. At this point, I'm going to pass things back over to Steve, who will give you the overview of QAComplete and how that works. So Steve, I'm going to make you the presenter right now.
All right, very good. Appreciate that, Nick. Okay, so Nick was able to show you a minute ago how you can create these automated tests from within TestComplete. Imagine that really removing a lot of the time that you have to do as far as regression testing and that kind of thing. So what I'm going to focus on today is I'm going to talk about how TestComplete, which is the tool you just saw, integrates with QAComplete. First of all, it's probably interesting to understand what QAComplete is. It's a tool to help you manage your software lifecycle. So everything from a list of requirements that you're delivering for a release. It allows you to create manual tests that you want to run through for each one of your requirements on a release. But it also has some nice little integration with TestComplete in that it can automatically show the runs that you've done through TestComplete. And what that allows your team to do is it allows them to see get the visibility of all of your automated test runs right next to your manual test runs. Now, QAComplete also has the ability to schedule those TestComplete runs through its scheduling component, and I'll demonstrate that to you in just a second. Now, in addition to requirements management, manual test management, and automation integration, QAComplete also has a very robust defect tracking solution built in as well. So if you needed to as you're running your test, your manual test, if you find that the test doesn't work as designed, you can very easily create defects, and it does integrate with most of the major defect tracking tools out there as well. So what we're going to do with QAComplete today is I'm going to, again, show you the integration between TestComplete and QAComplete. We're going to talk about how you can organize your requirements and link those up to releases, iterations, or builds. We're also going to talk about how to reuse your tests, your manual tests that you create, and also run those under different operating systems and browser configurations. I'll show you the run engine so that you can see once we've created a series of tests, how you would actually begin running those and We'll also talk about defect resolution. And finally, we do have a tool where if you're using HP Quality Center today and you want to get off of Quality Center, we do have a migration tool that can convert all of your Quality Center data into QAComplete data to make that migration path much easier for you. Now, just a quick overview here. Using your Q&A panel, let me know if you're using Agile development or if you're doing waterfall. So if you wouldn't mind just typing into the Q&A panel, waterfall or Agile, kind of give me an idea as to the types of people that we have in the webinar today and what you guys are doing. Looks like there's a number of people here doing Agile. Some people are doing waterfall. Some are doing a combination of the two. Great. Well, I'll talk about that as I go through here and how you configure the product a little differently for which methodology you're using. So let's go ahead and jump right in and take a look at that. All right. All right. So what we're looking at now is we're looking at QAComplete, and the first thing I want to start with is that integration between TestComplete and QAComplete. When you go into the Test Management tab of QAComplete, you're going to notice this little icon here called Automation. And that is where all of your test runs that you do with TestComplete show up inside of QAComplete. And it really doesn't matter what machine you're running on within your organization, whether you're running TestComplete directly from the desktop, or if you've scheduled it to run from within QAComplete, it'll log those results for you. And the cool thing about that is it can actually analyze that information in different ways. Right now I'm showing it by machine name. So you can see we have a lab, and it looks like we have probably 10 or 12 different machines in our lab here. And if I expand this, I can see what day these automated tests have run. So yesterday we had 1 run. 2 weeks ago we had 8 runs out there, and it will show you that run activity here. It'll also show you whether those tests passed, whether they failed. It'll show you how many tests were inside of the automated test that you did, and specifically how many passed or failed. If I click on any of these items, it'll also bring up that TestComplete log that Nick was showing you earlier that had all the screenshots and every automated step that it went along the path of the test. So you can really get down to that minute level of detail if you wish to do that. Now, the other big advantage of QAComplete is that it's fully web-based. So let's imagine that you had to leave work early one day. You got home around noon or something like that. You had to be with your kids because maybe they were sick at school or something. So you get home and you go, oh man, I created those automated tests at the office today, but I forgot to schedule those because I want them to run tonight. And you've got your kids, you can't drive back into the office, you don't have VPN connection. Well, we've really got you covered there because QAComplete and TestComplete integrate together. QAComplete is web-based. If you wanted to schedule some TestComplete runs by logging into QAComplete, you could log in from home from your web browser, come here and press Automation Scheduler. When you go to this screen, it's going to you have the opportunity to add a new schedule by pressing Add. And then it's just going to ask you, well, what do you want to schedule? And I'm going to say, well, I do want to schedule some TestComplete runs. Then it'll ask you what machine you want to run on. So let's say that I want to run on this precision machine here. Then you'll choose your TestComplete project and project suite. Then you'll tell it what time to run. Maybe you want to launch this tonight at 7 p.m. or something like that. So I could scroll down here and choose 7 o'clock. And while I'm at it, if I wish to run these sets of tests recurringly, I can also do that. So I could come here and say, yeah, I'd like to run these every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Now, for those of you that are doing Agile, you know that you normally do time box development. And normally you'll do sprints. And sometimes there'll be 30-day sprints, sometimes there'll be 2-week sprints. And a lot of times you'll want to run a series of tests for that length of time, and then you want to stop after that. Well, if you want to stop it from running on a particular date, you can also come here, click on the calendar, and you can say, yeah, I want to stop this 2 weeks from now, and it'll just stop running those tests at that prescribed time. All right, so that's basically an overview of how the TestComplete and QAComplete integrate. Now, there is one other thing that I'll quickly show you. If you go into the dashboard here of QAComplete, you will be able to see some pretty interesting information like test runs by test set and by configuration, all that. But if I scroll on down to the bottom, you'll also be able to look at your automated test runs here on a dashboard as well. So you'll be able to pull up any machine that you've run on, and it'll analyze what runs you've done day by day, how many have passed, how many have failed. So all of that information is right there at your fingertips now, and you can share that with your team because it's all web-based. Okay, so if you have any questions on that automation integration, make sure you use the Q&A panel to ask any questions, and we'll follow up on anything that we see up here in the Q&A panel. Okay, so now let's talk about the other features of QAComplete. From the QAComplete perspective, I've mentioned it really has three major functions. One is describing the requirements that you're going to be delivering for the release, creating a set of test cases, manual test cases, that you can link back to those requirements to ensure that you have enough test coverage that you feel comfortable going into production. And then thirdly, if you do discover any defects during the run of your tests, you need a way of collaborating with the developers to ensure that those defects get resolved. So it has a really nice, robust defect management solution built in. So before we go into the details of all that, I really want to get you acquainted with the user interface. What you'll see is QAComplete has a series of tabs across the top. It begins here with the home page. If I click on the home page, you'll see from the home page that it has a couple of different sub-menu items underneath. It has a dashboard, it has a team task board, and it has email alerts. The email alert section is where you can communicate how you would, you can tell QAComplete how you would like to be communicated with via email. So, for example, if you're a developer, you'll probably want to sign up for this defect assignment alert that says anytime I'm assigned a defect, send me notification of that. And as a tester, you may want to sign up for this ownership alert that says if I send a defect over to a developer and they fix that defect, I want to be communicated back letting me know that they fixed it. So you can sign up for any of these alerts, or you can create custom alerts. The second area here within the home page is called the Team Task Board. This is where you can view all of the tasks associated with a release. So for example, let's say that we're working on this first sprint of the first release. This will show me all of my tasks that I have defined. It will show me any of my requirements that I have defined and any defects that are defined. So if I wanted to look at just the defect list for that release, I can choose that, and it'll show me all of those defects right here. Now it puts it in three convenient columns. Notice that the first column here is called the to-do column. That's all of the defects that are out there that have not yet been started. Then you're going to see an in-progress column. This is going to show you all the defects in this example that have been started but not yet completed. And then finally, you have this completed column. That's all of the defects that have been resolved and completed and closed out over a particular time frame. Now, not only can you look at defects, you can also look at requirements. You can also see both of those on one screen by doing all. And the other cool thing is you can even drill into a specific engineer and look at that specific engineer's workload here as well. So nice little feature there. Finally, we'll talk about the dashboard. Now, if I go to the dashboard, you're going to see that we have a series of organized tabs that allow you to see how your development and testing efforts are going. So right now, we're positioned on the QA tab, and it's going to show you things like defect trend, how many defects are being discovered day by day, how many are open, how many are resolved, how many are in progress. Of course, you'll see your automated testing trend here. You'll also be able to look at things like defects by requirement. How many defects have we found for each one of the requirements we're delivering in a specific release or a specific sprint? That can be pretty powerful. The other thing that you can see here is test runs. So for any release or any sprint, you can see the list of requirements on the left axis, how many tests have passed, how many have failed, how many are still awaiting run. All of that is conveniently graphed out for you so you can really understand how your test efforts are going. Okay, so that's the home page. Now let's talk about releases. The second tab up here is called Releases, and this is where you can define your releases, and if you're using Waterfall, you'll probably just have kind of a flat type release structure. But if you're using Agile, you'll probably break your release down into Agile sprints, and we support both of those configurations, no problem there. So how do we organize releases? Well, the way I normally do it is we normally have different product lines within our organization that we're creating requirements for and we're doing releases on. So what I'll normally do is I will create a hide here for each of the products, and then within that hide, I'll normally create my releases. And you can see here this orders application has release 1, which has a couple of agile sprints underneath it, and then it has a release 2 that we've stubbed out for some future work that we're doing, and it's more of a flat waterfall type release structure. Now if I go back over to this first release that has several agile sprints underneath it, you can at any time see what the status of those releases are. You can see how many requirements are a part of the release. You can see how many tests you've created, how many defects have been discovered, and if you're using our time tracking capabilities, you can also do things like look at estimate versus actual, variance analysis, percentage complete, all that kind of stuff there. Now, if you wanted to understand what specific requirements were part of the release, you can simply click on the release. And when you drill into a release, first of all, you can describe things like the goal of the release, that kind of thing. But if I scroll all the way to the bottom here, notice how you can very quickly see the requirements that are related to the release. I can also see all of the defects that have been discovered for the release as well. Now, if you want to drill a little further, maybe I wanted to look at this requirement here in a little more detail, I can click it. That will then drill into the details of that requirement so that I can kind of validate what's going on that specific requirement if I wish to do that. Now, very similar to the home page, there's also dashboards here. These dashboards are going to all be revolve around the release itself. So this is going to show you things like release velocity. It's going to show you resource allocation so that you can see who is assigned to the release, how much work you've given them, how much work they're reporting they still have remaining to do, and how much work they've actually done. And all of these are drillable. I can drill into this resource allocation report, for example. I can run that report for any date and time frame, and it'll show me day by day what this specific person's working on day by day. All right, so that's basically setting up a release. All right, now, as you're working in a release, obviously you're going to be delivering requirements. And you'll see that we have an area over here called requirements that are specifically designed to allow you to track those. Now, you can imagine that you can organize your requirements any way you wish. And the way that I see this done a lot is that people will create normally a hide here that will represent the product. And then within that product, a lot of times they will organize it by functional area. So within this orders application, I'm looking only right now at my order maintenance requirements, but I can also slide down here and look at the reporting requirements as well. Now, it also may not be clear, but there's actually more requirements here than what I'm showing you. We're showing there's 8 requirements here for the orders application. There's actually more. What you can do with the software is you can actually filter down to a specific release, and that's what I've done here. I have the orders application release 1, sprint 1. All of these requirements you're looking at on the screen are tied to that specific sprint. If I wanted to see what's maybe in my upcoming sprint, maybe sprint 2, I can click on this Releases tab. It'll show me my release structure, and I can very easily click on an upcoming sprint, see what's going to be included in that, and it'll change my view over here. If I want to switch back over to sprint 1, it'll then show me what's over in sprint 1. So very easily adaptable there to your release. Now, so what does a requirement itself look like, and how do we tie a set of tests back to that requirement? Well, you can come in and you can add requirements to any of these folders by just pressing the Add New button. I'll drill into one here that we've already created. This is one that's going to allow us to place an order into the software. And first of all, you can see that you can describe your requirement in any level of detail that you feel comfortable in. All right. You can also see here that we have some approval processes set up for requirements. So that suggests that we have some type of workflow capability where you can define different workflow states, maybe different state transitions, and maybe collecting certain fields on the screen based on what transition state you're in. And if you're thinking that way, you're absolutely right. We do have a workflow, configurable workflow tool, and you can set certain people up to be approvers and others not approvers, so you have a lot of flexibility as to how you basically control your requirements. Now, in addition to defining requirements, you can also link other artifacts to a requirement. You know, a typical case here would be when you develop a requirement, you need to create a set of tests for it. And you can see here as I expand this that we've written 3 tests for this requirement. You may also be wondering what defects have been discovered for the requirement. You can expand the defects tree here. It'll show you any defects that have been discovered for that requirement as well. Now, I know a lot of you, when you're doing requirements development, a lot of you probably attach other artifacts to the requirement. For example, you may have prototypes, or you may have detailed designs, or whatever. Notice that you can come to this Files tab, and you can attach as many files here as you wish. So if you wanted to put your prototypes, your wireframes, your detailed designs, all of that, you can upload any type of document and associate it to the requirement. And the document piece of this also has versioning capabilities. For example, you can see this detailed design's been through a couple of revisions. All of that happened for us automatically as we uploaded a new version of the document. So if you ever need to go back to a prior version of the document, it's simply a click away. Okay, so that's the basic overview of requirements. Now, if I go to the dashboard within the requirements section, what we're going to see is that it'll now analyze just the requirement store. So you're going to be able to get some really interesting analytics out of the requirement store. So the kind of analytics that I see people are interested in is analyzing how many requirements you have for a specific release and what state are they in. Are they in an approved state, or are they in some type of review state? You may also want to know who those requirements were assigned to. You may also want to know how many defects have been generated for each one of these requirements. You'll be able to look at that. You'll be able to look at things like how many tests have been run against each requirement, how many passed, how many failed, how many still need to be run. And of course, you're going to want to look at percentage complete for each of the requirements to see how close we are to completion on each of the requirements. Now, these dashboards, as I might have mentioned earlier, are drillable. So if I wanted to drill into these approved items here, I can click the graph there. It'll drill right on down into the detailed level information so that you can now see the details. So these are all of the approved requirements here, and here's the one that's in review complete state. If you want to drill a little lower and look at more of the detail, you can then click on the ID there, and then it'll drill down to that lowest level of detail, which is the individual requirement. It'll have all of the information about the requirement. It'll have all of the audit activity, all the important dates associated with the requirement. All of that information is there in a nice printable view for you. Okay, so that's basically the requirements. Okay, so most of us in the room today are probably testers, and this is really what we care about. You know, our job is quality. We want to make sure that that as we have requirements coming in from our business analysts, that we're able to design and develop a number of test cases so that we can ensure that every test or every requirement that's out there is fully tested. And that's what this test management section is all about. So how is it used? Well, this test management section really has 3 distinct areas. It has what we call the test library. That's where you're going to keep all of your reusable tests, because you don't want to have to recreate the wheel from release to release. You want to be able to have a library that houses your tests and simply reuse them and add to those tests as you do upcoming releases. Secondly, most likely, you're going to be running these tests under different browsers and operating systems, because if you're like us, you got to test under IE, under Firefox, Safari, maybe Chrome, and you want to be able to run, create a test once, run it under those different configurations, and figure out which ones are passing and which ones are failing. So that's going to be really critical. We have an area over here called configurations where you can define those types of configurations. And then finally, there's this area here called test sets. Test sets are nothing more than a way of organizing a series of tests to run in a particular order for a particular reason. So you may have a test set for regression, you may have a test set for smoke test, or you may have test sets that simply test a specific feature of your software. And when you create a test set and you pull in tests from the library to be a part of that test set, As you run those, you can have it run that test set under different browser and operating system configurations, and then track that run activity. So what does a test look like in the library? Well, here you can see that I've organized my tests into functional areas. So I have some here for order maintenance and some for reporting. If I drill into a specific test that I've created, first of all, you'll see that there's some metadata, right? So you can have design statuses here, like the approval process for tests, that kind of thing. You'll also see that you can describe the test from an overall perspective. Okay, you can prioritize these tests. You can assign them to one or more people. You can also link this test back to one or more requirements, and that's where the traceability comes in. That allows you to look at a requirement and see how many tests have been developed to ensure that you have enough test coverage there. All right. Now, so that's basically creating the test metadata. Now, also for every test, you're probably going to have a series of steps that you want the user to go through to ensure that they fully test this test scenario. And you'll see that we have a test tab, or a test steps tab for that. And in fact, if I drill into any of these, I can get into edit mode, and I can change any of these test steps. If I want to add some test steps, I simply go to the end, basically type in some data, and then tab on through. You can add as many different steps here as you care to add. It's no problem. If you also want to rearrange these steps, you can also drag and drop them so that you can reposition them. If you want to remove some of your steps, you can come here and just delete a step. You can also pull steps from an existing test case. You can come over here and look at your test library and say, well, I want to bring in some tests from this order listings area. What tests do I have out there? You can expand that. It'll show your list of tests that are in that order listings area. And then if you choose one, it'll show you all the steps in that test case. If you wanted to reuse some of those steps, you can highlight one or more of the steps and simply drag and drop them right onto the canvas. That saves you from having to do a lot of typing here. So it's really designed to make usability a key and important part of this. Okay, so that's basically setting up a test. Now, I hinted earlier that we have this configurations area. And this configurations area is where you can define your different browsers and operating systems. You may even have some mobile configurations out there, right? So under my configurations area, you can see that I've organized some mobile configurations for Android, iPhone, and iPad. I've created some configurations here for Windows 7 with different browsers and operating systems, and you can see that I've done the same for XP. So adding these configurations, is simply a click away, no problem there. Okay. So how do we run these tests? How do we organize them into a series of tests that we want to run? We do that through what we call the test sets area. If I go into the test sets area, first of all, you can organize your test sets into test suites. And if you look to the left over here, you'll see I have this orders application, I have some functional test suites, and I have some regression test suites. So you can organize them in any level of folder hierarchy that you feel is necessary. Now, when you create a test set, here's an example of a test set where we're going to test the printing process for delayed orders. So you can see that I've described this test here. I've approved it. You can also see that I prioritized it as high, and I've described here what it's all about. If I scroll to the bottom, you can also see that I've decided that I want to run this test set under different browser and operating system configurations. I want to run it under Windows 7 i8, i9, and Firefox. Also going to do some mobile testing here to test it on Android, iPhone, and iPad. And you can even reuse these test sets from release to release. So you can see that this one's set up to run in release 2. If I wanted to add release 3 here, I just press link to items and then choose release 3. I don't have to go in and recreate the test set to do that. You simply link it up to the next release. Now, the final part of creating a test set is identifying the test that you want to run. And if you see here, I have actually identified 4 tests that we want to be a part of this test set. One is where we're going to test the file new operation, the file open operation. We're going to do a search and a print. If I wanted to pull in some additional tests from my library, I could come here and I could find some additional tests in my library, maybe some here from reporting, and I can take any of those, drag and drop those right onto the canvas, and then they'll be part of this test set. If I decide I don't want those, I can come here and remove them by just pressing this little remove button here. Okay, so that describes how to organize a series of tests within a test set. So how do we run it? We simply go to that test set. We press that little blue button right there called Run Now, and that's going to take us into the Run engine. When we get to the Run engine, it's automatically going to select the release that we're testing on, and here are all those different browser and operating system configurations that we want to run under. And I can see also the last time we ran this test set and who ran it for that specific release. So if I wanted to rerun, let's say this IE test here, I can choose IE, choose Run, and then it'll then give me a summary of all of the tests inside of that test set. So it's basically saying, okay, you've got 4 tests here as part of the test set. Normally, as you can see here, it takes about 3 minutes to run these. If I want to begin the run process, I simply press the Run button. It gets into run mode. Then you can actually make this screen a little smaller. You can resize it, and you can bring up the application you're testing right over to the right of where you're doing your testing. And this is going to step us through it. It says, okay, first log into the order system. So I go here and I log in, and that looks okay. So I'm going to come down here and press Pass Step. It marks that as passed, moves me on to the next test. Then it says click File New. That works okay. I pass that step. Then it says Test Performance, so I do File New. It works under 3 seconds. That passes. Everything's good. Now I want to bring your attention down to the bottom of the page. Notice that this test is based on this requirement called the Add File Operations menu requirement. If I want to look at the details of that requirement, I can simply click that, and I can pull that up side by side while I'm actually doing the test. That's a really big value add because you can look at the requirement while you're in test mode. A lot of the tools out in the market don't have that capability, so that's a nice little feature. Once I'm done with that test, I just move on to the next one by pressing Next Test. Now, what happens if something fails? Let's say that this next test is going to test a file open process, and we want to be able to open it up maybe in an Excel spreadsheet mode. Well, let's say that I get down to this step here where I choose a file, and maybe it does not allow me to open it up as Excel, so no Excel option. I can come down here and record some notes here in the actual result so that the developer knows what I saw whenever I did this. Now, that's one way to do it. For me, I'm a little more visual than that. Rather than taking notes about it, I like to actually create a movie and show the developer what I saw when I actually did the test. So how do I do that? Well, I can use this third-party tool called Jing. If you're not familiar with Jing, it is a free tool, and it's out at www.jingproject.com. Now, Jing integrates with QAComplete, so I can actually record a movie using Jing. I can come here and show the developer what I saw when I came in here. I get in here and I say, oh, you know what? I wanted to open this up in Excel format. I don't have Excel as a possibility here, so that's the problem. I can then stop the movie. It'll then take that and create a physical movie from it. When it creates that movie, you can then save that movie locally by pressing Save, or with a single click, you can take that movie and automatically transfer it up to your FTP site. Now, because Jing and QAComplete have a nice little integration together, once you've uploaded that movie up to your FTP site, you can then just go into the actual result and paste the movie location right into the actual result. And what that allows you to do is then your developer can then see what you saw, because they can go in and access that movie, and they can actually view that movie as they're working on any defect that comes up. So that's one of the nice little value adds there, is that you're able to paste in any movie that you create during that testing process. You can convert to a movie, and then you can include that in your actual results of the test. And if you generate a defect from it, you can also include that as part of the defect as well. So how does that work? Well, you simply go to this actual result, and you do something like this. See this movie, right-click, choose Paste, and it'll paste the URL of that movie right in. All right, now, once I'm done with this, I can say go ahead and move on to the next test. And it's going to say, hey, Steve, you just failed this test. Would you like for me to create a defect for you while I'm at it? Sure, you know what, that would save me a lot of work there. So I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, go ahead and create a defect for me so I don't have to do it manually. And what we'll see is that it creates this defect for us. And notice the steps to reproduce down here. If I expand that, make that a little larger, it just copied in every single step that we went through, and it tells me right in the actual result whether it passed or failed, and lo and behold, there's that link to that movie. If I click that, it'll bring the movie up and then allow me to see that. So imagine being the developer and being able to view the movie of exactly how you produce the problem. It'll reduce a lot of the rework that goes back and forth. Now it takes me back into test mode. I'll go ahead and pass the rest of these tests here. Once I'm done with these tests, it's going to then summarize the run. It's going to tell me which tests passed, which ones failed, and how long each one of those took to run. Now when I pop back into the application, I can now really do some interesting analytics. So I can now go to my test management dashboard, and I can start looking at what's going on in the release. I can pull up a specific release, see how many tests I've run, how many have passed, how many have failed. I can also look at them by configuration. I can see here that most of my tests right now are being run under Windows 7 IE9, and some have failed. I can scroll down and compare my run activity by requirement to figure out what requirements are getting the most testing. And I can also see who's doing the most testing too, because I can see test runs by assignee. Now, in addition to these test management dashboards, there's tons of reports. And these reports can analyze a lot of information. So you can come in here and run any of these reports. There's probably 30 or 40 different reports. One of my favorite reports is this test coverage run details by test set. If you run it, what it'll do is it'll graphically show you the pass-fail information for each one of the test sets that you're running per release. And then as you begin navigating into the report, it'll not only show you that information graphically, as you can see here, as I continue to page on, it'll show you the details that make that graph up. And all of these reports are fully portable. So if you wanted to export these to Word or Excel or PDF and email them to others, it allows you to do that. Now, a couple of questions are coming in now about JIRA. I know a lot of people use JIRA for defect tracking. And the question that I get a lot of times is, hey, Steve, I can see that you have a cool defect tracking tool, but our development team uses JIRA. They're not going to move away from it. They're comfortable with it. Do you have a way of spawning a defect into JIRA? And the answer to that's absolutely yes, absolutely we do. We've got integrations with a lot of different defect tracking tools. JIRA is probably the one that we integrate with most. And it is a two-way synchronization if you want it to be. So you can raise defects here in QAComplete. They'll automatically appear in JIRA. You can raise them in JIRA. They can automatically show up in QAComplete. You can update them in QAComplete. They'll update JIRA. You can update JIRA. It can update QAComplete and keep those two in sync. So if your developers want to continue using JIRA, let them do it. As a QA team, if you want to use QAComplete for it, you're free to do that as well. All right, so that's kind of an overview of QAComplete. Back to the PowerPoint real quick. I'll just kind of summarize what we've talked about today, and then we'll take any questions that you guys have. All right. So what we've talked about today is we saw how we could use TestComplete to create these automated tests, and you can imagine how much time that can save you if you have a repeatable process for running your automated tests. We've looked at QAComplete so that we can make sure that all your requirements are fully tested. We saw how we can reuse our tests from release to release. We talked about organizing those into test sets and rerunning those in other releases. We talked about how we can share your test results with others because QAComplete is web-based. Your team members can see all of that test activity together. We've also talked about how you can understand your progression of tests, how many passed, how many failed, that kind of thing. And we talked about using Jing and other features in there for recording your bugs so that you can reduce a lot of the rework. All right. It is important to note that we do have free trials for both of these products. We have 30-day trials, so if you're interested in the products and you haven't downloaded the trial yet, you can go out to smartbear.com and you can download 30-day trials for both of these products. So at this point, I will go ahead and look through the questions here, and we'll answer the questions that come in. If this spawns additional questions, feel free to use the Q&A panel, and we'll make sure that we answer any questions that come up. Okay, so Nick, this one's for you. It says, does TestComplete capture multimedia visualized from a server serving up full motion video, or the simulation of that video is quickly displayed by individual frames, etc.? Do you have any thoughts on that?
So yeah, so TestComplete doesn't have the ability to verify streaming video, but we can verify still images. So if you've got the ending screen of your movie comes up on screen, TestComplete would be able to validate that.
Great. And a follow-up question says, if the name of the control, it's talking about the controls that you set up or record inside of TestComplete, if they're changed by a developer, let's say they change the name of the control or something like that, do you have to go back in and change everything in TestComplete, and is it a cumbersome process to do? How does that work?
Sure, so that's not a cumbersome process at all. In fact, there's a special file inside of TestComplete called the name map, and that name map contains information about all the controls you've worked with in your tests. So if the developer made a change to the name of an object, all you'd have to do is go into the name map, modify that object's entry, and then all your tests would automatically be updated and would run successfully.
Great, perfect. All right, question about QAComplete and ALM Complete. Someone mentioned that they have ALM Complete today. They don't have QAComplete. What's the difference between ALM Complete and QAComplete? Well, underneath the covers, QAComplete and ALM Complete is really the same tool, except for ALM Complete has some additional capabilities that I didn't show you today in QAComplete. And it really revolves more around project management. So where QAComplete is more targeted to the testing team, ALM Complete services the testing team, but also services the bigger project management team. So it allows you to do things like create project plans. It allows you to decompose your project plans down into tasks. It allows you to do agile burn downs, velocity, things of that nature. So good question there. All right. Let's see here. Another follow-up on your question earlier. Nick, it said, can it record images, the TestComplete, can it record images and their location on the screen?
Yep, it sure can. We can verify that an image is rendered on screen. We can also, if you want to verify its XY location on screen, we can do that too.
Okay, great. All right, another question that just follow up here is there a way to see your automated and your manual tests together on one report or one graph? Most of our graphs are independent there. They'll have your manual tests and your automated tests, but you can see them side by side. It doesn't prevent you, though, from creating a graph or a report and aggregating that information. With our on-premises edition, you have full control over the dashboard, so you can create your own dashboards. It also has a very tight integration with SAP's Crystal Reports, which is the market-leading reporting tool, and that tool has the capability to merge different areas of the software. So if you wanted to see your manual and your automated tests on one specific report, it's not difficult to do that at all. All right, let's see what else we have here. All right, somebody who says, what URL do I use to log into QAComplete from my home to schedule automated tests on QAComplete? Yeah, so once you sign up for a trial, what you'll do is you'll be given a URL to log into the trial, and you'll use that same URL from home. So if you're at home and you wanted to log into QAComplete, it's just a URL. It's basically login.softwareplanner.com. That's what the URL is. So you would go there, and as long as you've installed the plug-in between TestComplete and QAComplete on the machine, as soon as if you had, let's say that you had 3 machines in your lab, you would install that plug-in on all 3 machines. And as soon as you do that, it then will show up inside of QAComplete as a machine that you can schedule runs on. So if you're at home, you'll see that, you'll have that visibility if you've set the plug-in up on those machines. All right. Next question here says, do I need to have a separate license to download QAComplete on my home computer? No, you don't. QAComplete is a web-based solution, so once you have a license, you can use it anywhere in the world. You can use it in the office, at home. If If you're on the road, you can use it in the coffee shop. It's not a big deal. That's no problem there. All right. All right, let's see here. The next question says, does your system interface with JIRA? If so, please describe that. I talked a little bit about that earlier. It does have a really nice integration with JIRA, and it has a two-way synchronization. So if you wanted to synchronize your JIRA data store with your defect store over in QAComplete, it's just a matter of setting up the integration for that. That's not a problem. All right. Next question says, can videos be attached as files to any of your tests or your requirements, that kind of thing? Yeah, absolutely. You can attach any type of file. It doesn't matter what type of file it is. Next question says, is there a central location where a business analyst can load up all the requirements that are incorporated in the given release so that the tester can map those requirements to test cases? Yeah, absolutely. So the business analyst can go in and define those requirements. They can pull those up in that requirement list. They can edit a requirement, and actually a tester can edit any of those requirements and start adding tests directly while they're on that requirement screen. So it's simply a click away. It's not a problem to do that. All right. Next question says, how do you run an automated script for a mobile device, iPhone or Android? I think that's a better question for Nick. Nick, did you have a quick second to respond to that? I know you got to jump off at the top of the hour.
Yep. One thing to mention about that, right now TestComplete does not support mobile devices, but it is something that's on the roadmap for the future, so we will be implementing it at a later date.
Perfect. All right. All right. One other person was asking about importing data. Can we import, for example, test cases into the test management solution from Excel? Yes, absolutely. There's when you're in the software, if you're over in the test management area and you click on the test library, when it shows you the list of tests, there's a little action here called, there's a little area over here called Actions, and part of that Actions menu here is an import process, import from CSV file. So as long as you take that Excel spreadsheet and save it as a comma-separated file, you can import that into the tool. All right. Next question comes from Olga. She says, can you please get into more details about the link between manual and automated tests? We cannot so far figure out how to create the report for this. Yeah, so physically they're separate inside of our software. In other words, the automated tests they live inside of TestComplete, and the manual tests live inside of QAComplete. However, as you run your tests, Olga, from an automated perspective, if you have the connector working, it reports the run activity into QAComplete with all the summary information. If you wanted to create a report that had those two things together, you would need the on-premises edition of QAComplete for that, and you could build that report as a dashboard, or you could build that report using SAP's Crystal reports. Good. Other questions? Right, folks, I think we're at the top of the hour. A lot of great questions came in to do. We do appreciate all the questions that came in and the attentiveness of everybody. We will be sending out the recorded session immediately following this today, so keep an eye out for that. Feel free to make sure that you pass that along to others on your team. So if there's somebody that wanted to attend today and maybe wasn't able to attend, make sure that you pass along the recorded session. And remember also to join us after the event via Twitter. There's going to be a discussion going out there using the hashtag test management. We appreciate everybody's time today, and everybody have a great day.